Hi, my name is Karen Kolbe, and I'm coming to you today as Mother Goose. I like to go into the classrooms and read stories, poems, golden books, fairy tales, all kinds of things that children enjoy, and I hope that you will enjoy too. I brought my friend Feathers. Feathers usually just sits with me, but he likes to listen to me read also. Today the story is going to be classic golden book, Walt Disney's Pinocchio. I hope you like it. I like this story. Remember, when we read stories like these, use your imagination. You can even close your eyes and think of what I'm reading and see if you can picture it in your head. Kindly old Geppetto stood at his workbench and carved on a puppet that looked just like a real boy. He sang as he worked, and little Figaro, his cat, played with the wood chips as they fell from his knife. Jiminy Cricket chirped merrily on the hearth, and the goldfish, Cleo, swam around and around in her bowl. "There," said Geppetto as he held up the puppet, "you're finished." He held the strings and danced the little wooden boy across the floor. "How I wish you were a real live boy," he said. "What fun we would have, you and Figaro and Cleo and I." "What about me?" added a small voice. "Couldn't I have fun too?" "Oh, Jiminy Cricket, of course you could have fun too," laughed Geppetto. "You could go everywhere with him to keep him out of trouble. What shall we call him?" Pinocchio. Little wooden-headed Pinocchio." "A dandy name, Pinocchio," cried Jiminy Cricket. He jumped from the floor to the workbench. "A really dandy name." At that moment, all the clocks in the house started to strike. Old Geppetto looked up. "It's 9 o'clock," he said. "Time for bed." He placed Pinocchio on the workbench, tumbled Figaro into his big bed, and blew a kiss to Cleo in her bowl. He opened the window, and the light of the evening star streamed into the room. "Starlight, star bright," he said softly. "I wish Pinocchio were a real live boy." He looked once more at the merry little puppet, then settled down in his bed. In a minute, he was snoring. Only Jiminy Cricket was still awake. He was unhappy, thinking of old Geppetto and the fact that he would never have his wish. Suddenly he heard a strange, sweet sound of music. The evening star sailed through the sky and into Geppetto's window. The cottage was filled with dazzling light, and there stood a lovely fairy, all dressed in blue. "It's the Blue Fairy," whispered Jiminy Cricket. "Geppetto will get his wish this time, or my name isn't Jiminy Cricket." The Blue Fairy flew to the workbench where the little wooden Pinocchio sat and said, "Awake, Pinocchio, and live. To you the gift of life I give. Be good and bring Geppetto joy, and grow to be a real live boy." And she waited. You can imagine Geppetto's surprise the next morning when he found Pinocchio running around. "I'm dreaming. You can't be alive. You're still made of wood," said the astonished man. "But if I'm brave and good, I'll be a real live boy someday," said Pinocchio joyfully. At last, Geppetto said, "Now, Pinocchio, it's time for all good boys to go to school." And Pinocchio started out. "Pinocchio," Jiminy Cricket called, "wait for me." But although the Blue Fairy had told Pinocchio that Jiminy Cricket was to be his friend and his conscience, Pinocchio did not hear the voice of his little friend. Suddenly, something tripped Pinocchio. It was a cane, and it was thrust between his flying feet by the sly old fox, J. Worthington Foulfellow. Foulfellow helped Pinocchio to his feet, and he winked at his partner, Gideon, the bad cat. "Ha, ha, Pinocchio," began Foulfellow. "You were going a little too fast, and in the wrong direction. Now, I have a plan for you. Come." "But I'm on my way to school," said Pinocchio. "To school," said Foulfellow. "I have a much better plan." The three of them set off, arm in arm. Jiminy Cricket came panting along behind him. Soon they came to a great coach. The two scoundrels took the coach from the wicked-looking coachman, and they took a large bag. They had sold Pinocchio for gold. Then they went away laughing. Jiminy was frightened, but he hopped bravely aboard just as the coach drove off. The coach was pulled by 6 sad little donkeys. It was filled with boys of all sizes and ages, a noisy, rowdy crowd. Pinocchio made friends with the leader, a boy named Lampwick, but Jiminy sadly hid in a corner. He knew this was not a good place. Pleasure Island was wonderful, just as Foulfellow had said. And when Jiminy Cricket tried to get Pinocchio to go home, Pinocchio turned his back on his tiny friend. "I'll go back after a while," he said. "Right now I want to have some fun." "You bet," yelled Lampwick. "Come on." Every day they played. They ate candy and ice cream and cake and more candy. They broke windows, threw mud, and carved up furniture. Oh, dear. "Good," said the mayor. "Go for it, boys." "Fine," said the coachman. "They're almost ready." "Pinocchio," begged Jiminy Cricket, "please come with me." "Who's the goody-goody?" sneered Lampwick. "Yeah," Pinocchio said. "Go away, Cricket. I'm tired of you." He looked at Lampwick for approval. Right before his eyes, Lampwick's ears became long and fuzzy. Then he grew a tail, and then in a twinkling of an eye, Lampwick turned into a little donkey. The coachman came running and put a rope around Lampwick's neck. "Aha!" he cried. "Another donkey to sell to the man who runs the salt mine." He reached for Pinocchio, because Pinocchio was growing donkey ears and a donkey tail too. But Jiminy Cricket shouted, "Run, Pinocchio! Come on!" And this time, Pinocchio ran with Jiminy Cricket. They ran to the edge of the island and dived into the water and swam away from that terrible place. Hours later, wet and tired, they came to Geppetto's cottage, but no one was there. Geppetto had taken Figaro and Cleo and gone to search for Pinocchio. Poor Pinocchio. "It's all my fault," he told Jiminy Cricket. "Will I ever find my father again?" "I don't know," said Jiminy. "It might be dangerous." "I don't mind," declared Pinocchio. "It's my job to find him, even if it's dangerous." So away went Pinocchio with Jiminy beside him. And what adventures they did have! Uphill, downhill, into danger, and out again. They even chased a whale to the bottom of the sea, and the Blue Fairy watched them all the way. She was watching when they found Geppetto at last and led him safely home. It was only then that Geppetto noticed Pinocchio's donkey ears. "I'm sorry, Father," Pinocchio said humbly, "but I do know better now." Suddenly the evening star brightened the room, and the Blue Fairy appeared. "You've learned your lesson well, Pinocchio," she said, And as her magic wand touched him, Pinocchio felt himself turn into a real boy. "Father," he cried, "I'm a real boy at last." Geppetto hugged him and laughed and cried for joy. And as for Jiminy Cricket, the fairy gave him a badge of gold. And on the badge it read, "Awarded to a good conscience who helped make a real boy out of a wooden head." The end. When the fairy referred to Jiminy Cricket and said he had a good conscience, do we know what that means? Do we know what conscience means? If your mom bakes cookies and says that you can have a cookie, that's one cookie. But if your mom isn't there, you really want another cookie. But you know that your mother said only one, and so you don't take that extra one. That's our conscience. It's there when we aren't sure what to do. We know we shouldn't do something, but we want to do it anyway, like eat another cookie. But our conscience is inside us saying, no, you shouldn't do that. Our conscience is kind of a monitor, just like Jiminy Cricket went with Pinocchio and told him he shouldn't go, he shouldn't do things. Our conscience is like that. We can't hear it or see it, but we can feel it, so we know what our conscience is telling us to do or not to do. So that's the lesson in this book. We all have to listen to our conscience when we're trying to decide whether or not to do something. I hope you like that book. I like that book.